I'm Dave Groen. I'm the president of Clarion Bathware, and this is Brian Milford, our plant engineer and product engineer for Clarion Bathware. We're here today to talk about the installation of our 3/4 inch barrier-free units. In the industry, there's a lot of problems in installations. It's a very simple program. Clarion Bathware has a very unique installation program, especially with our Clarion Bathware floor flange. About 10 years ago, Brian and I were having problems when they first came out with these top-mounted units. You know, basically beforehand you had to recess them 2 inches in the ground. When they wanted a top-mounted unit, basically it took so much out of the flange when it stretched 60 inches, they bowed in the center. We tried lots of things. We put new coring, we put different types of wood, we put different types of steel in there, we put rebar in there, but nothing seemed to work. So one day Brian and I were down in the mold shop arguing, trying to figure out how to fix this, and I was putting steel on the bottom of the unit saying, Brian, how can we attach this steel so we can screw this to the floor? And he says, Dave, why do that? Just put a floor flange on it. It was a great idea, so we did that. We incorporated it in all our 3/4 inch units, and today actually most of our competition is following suit. The nice thing about the 3/4 inch unit with the floor flange, it allows you to screw your unit to the floor the whole way across, eliminating any bowing, and also for a good transition between your floor and the subfloor of the unit. Now we want to talk about the installation, Brian. You want to talk about how we rough in the pockets?
Sure. Well, let's talk about the tools that you need. First, we're going to talk about some of the tools you use to properly install this unit.
So, Brian, what would you consider the most important tool out of this bunch for installing a unit?
Well, Dave, the most important tool would be the installation instructions.
The installation instructions, wonderful. What's the second most important tool, Brian?
The second most important tool, Dave, is a good accurate level.
Why do we need a level, Brian?
Well, in order to maintain the proper drainage of the unit, you need a level to tell you how you're setting it.
Have you ever seen any units not level when you go out in the field?
Actually, Dave, I have. I've seen quite a few of them not level.
Well, I think we need to get started.
Okay.
Well, Brian, I've read through the installation instructions, and basically when I go through this, I think there's basically 3 steps to easily installing one of our units. First is basically reading the instructions, finding out what the rough opening dimensions are, checking the rough opening dimensions. Second is going to be to pre-fit the unit. And third is going to actually go ahead and put your bedding material in it, set it in, level it, and screw it to the wall. So the first thing we need to do here, Brian, is basically prep the opening and make sure it fits the dimensions that the manufacturer has spec'd for this particular unit. I think you have those in your hand, don't you, Brian?
I have the dimensions for this unit, Dave. They're available on the Clarion Bathware's website, or they're from whoever you purchased the shower from.
Great. So why don't we go ahead and get that started, Brian?
Okay, Dave. Okay, I have the drawing for the unit, and I want to verify that the dimensions for the pocket are correct, so I'll measure from side to side, and I'm looking for a dimension of 63 inches, which I have, and I need a dimension of 33 3/4 front to back, which I have here. The other more important thing is I need to make sure the drain's in the right location. On this drawing it says it's 7 inches from the back and 31.5 inches from the side, which that drain is in the right position. The next thing that we need to make sure is we need to take our level and verify that we're level across the front of the opening, which if you can see the level, it's good there. And then we also need to check from front to back and make sure we're level as well, which we're there, good there. And then the next thing is to make sure the framing around our pocket is plumb so that it doesn't push the unit out of level, which this unit is. Okay, one of the other things that we need to make sure is that we have an 8-inch square or an 8-inch round cutout or opening for the drain. And we also need to make sure that the top of the drain pipe is flush with the subflooring, and that for at least 2.5 inches below the subfloor, there are no fittings or other obstructions that would interfere with the backside of the drain fitting.
Okay, Brian, before we go further, why don't we talk about some of the common problems we see in installations. We get a lot of phone calls from customers that have shower stalls that aren't draining correctly. We have to go out there, we cut out the floors, and as we pull up the floors, we find out that most of the problem is just poor cement problems we see underneath there. We tried to set up several I guess you want to call it, situations that we commonly see in the field. The first one here looks like we have some unlevelness here and a buildup back here, Brian. Tell us what you see here and how we would fix it.
Well, what you see here is where the edges of two slabs came together, or a Dox plank type insulation. But basically, it's just an unevenness in the floor. Either the unit needs to be shimmed to level, and the level going into the unit corrected after the fact, or you need to chip the cement to create a level floor before you install the unit.
Okay. What about back here? It's built up. Is that going to cause us a problem in the installation?
That will cause us a problem. We need to either chip that down or raise the unit in order to avoid the problems that would cause.
But if you raise the unit, doesn't that cause you some problems for ADA requirements?
Yeah, if you raise the unit, you will have to have somebody readjust the flooring going into the unit after the installation is done.
Or else you won't meet ADA. Right. Okay. The next situation we see here is something we commonly see. The cement really looks nice and level on the outside, no problems here, till you get up around where they boxed out around the drain. And we see this a lot where they do a poured-in-place flooring on some of these things. Right. And tell us how we can fix this, Brian, and what problems it causes for us.
Well, the problem that this causes for us is the lowest area on the bottom side of our floor is around the drain, around that box out, and that's the highest part of this floor. The solution to this is really simple. Just get a chipping hammer and chip that down so you have a level floor. Then you can install the unit as normal and everything is fine.
Okay, Brian, this next one looks pretty obvious as what's happening here. If you look at the level, it looks like the whole floor is just leaning to the right here. What can we do in this situation?
Well, Dave, either in this situation you can chip the floor down to create a level surface, or you can just shim the unit up into place and correct the difference in level before you put the final floor covering on.
So what you do is you set the shower stall on top of it, put your shims underneath it, screw it down? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, I would attach the shims. I'd screw the shims down to the floor so they didn't shift. I wouldn't even put the unit in place. I would just shim it just the way you see under the level there now.
Okay. Then after you put the unit in, you would level it out with the floor material in front over the floor flange?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. One more thing, Brian. What about when you see an off-center drain on a unit? How do you handle that? I know we've gone into places where you see the drains either on the edge of an opening, or it's off-center and it just doesn't work. How do we handle that, and what should you do?
Well, the biggest problem with an off-center drain, Dave, is there might be clearance on the drain pipe, but when you actually see the fitting for the backside of the drain, it'll interfere with the edge of the hole, and it will not allow the floor to go down into a position, and that'll cause some draining issues for that. So what you have to keep in mind is not only do you have to clear the pipe around the floor, you also have to clear the drain fitting that can stick out, as much as an inch, inch and a half away from that pipe.
Okay. So the whole idea behind this whole segment here is to let people know is if you're prepping the opening, you're looking at the opening, make sure it's plumb, check the floor. These floors cause a lot of problems in these installation units, and the reason they do that is because of the tolerances, Brian. So there's a difference in tolerance, I do believe, between a standard residential unit and an institutional 3/4 inch unit. Could you explain that? What is the difference?
Well, the difference is our 3/4 inch unit, we have 3/4 of an inch to get all of the slope to the floor in, all of the slope down into the drain and the floor in that, plus we have all of our part thickness in there. So by the time we're done, we really have no room. As little as 1/4 of an inch in variance in the level of that floor can cause a draining issue in the floor of these showers.
So for many, I guess you want to call it plumbers, installing shower stalls, if you're installing a standard residential shower stall with a 6-inch dam, you can install that and be 1/4 inch off, and you're not going to have much of a draining issue. Is that correct?
Correct. The drainage that we have is pretty much the minimum in order to get all the slope to the drain in the 3/4 inch unit. And in a standard unit, we can go more towards the maximum. It's not as close to the floor, and so it's a lot more forgiving installation.
So on a regular installation, how much of a tolerance level do we have to be out of plumb, left to right, front to back in these units, and still have good drainage?
I would say no more than 1/4 of an inch over the width of the unit.
Okay. I think our next step is to basically pre-fit our shower stall to see how it's going to fit in there, and then go into the installation.
Yes, Dave. The first thing we want to do in the pre-fit process is to remove the shipping brace and attach any plumbing fixtures that need to be attached.
Yeah, one of the additional things you'll find out about the Clarion unit is it does come with a shipping base brace on the back of that unit. That's to keep the drain up off the ground, because the drain is the lowest part of that whole shower stall. If it ships and it's sitting on the drain the whole time it's in a warehouse, or the whole time it's in someone's installation, it's going to push it up and you're not going to have drainage. So we put a shipping block back there so that you don't have any degradation on that. So we have to cut that off first, and then make sure all your plumbing fixtures are attached that you need in place, and then we can go ahead and put the unit in.
Correct.
So the next step is lay it down, cut the block off, right?
That's right, Dave. Let's go do it. The first thing we want to do in prepping the unit for installation is we want to remove this shipping leg off of the back of the unit. Dave explained a little bit why we have the shipping leg there. I just want to mark it out and take a circular saw, and taking care not to cut any deeper than the depth of that board, cut that board off of the unit. So I'm going to mark it, and then I'll make the cut. Okay, one of the things that we want to make sure is that the saw blade is set not to cut any more than the depth of the board on the back side of the unit. So we want to make sure the saw blade's set. We're not going to go down through and cut into the fiberglass. So now I'm ready to cut it. Okay, I've made the cut. Now I just need to break that board off and take it away. Now, I've been to some job sites where that wasn't removed. And what that does is cause the unit to lean forward, and it cannot be leveled then.
So again, Brian, what would happen if it's not removed? How do you fix that in a job site?
You take the unit out, you cut the board off, and then you reinstall the unit properly.
That's really ugly, isn't it?
Yeah, but unfortunately there's just no way to level the unit properly with this shipping brace in place.
And that's the only way to save the floor, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.